Hi, my name is Graham Tech Prep, and today I'd like to talk to you guys about something I call the Computer Science Course and Career Map. And just before jumping right into it, a quick little about me. I'm a current Terp who wants to give back, specifically because I'm frustrated at how difficult it is to gain information about and navigate the computer science department here at Maryland, and then plan for your future. And if you do recognize my voice, I would appreciate if you just keep it anonymous, or if you have to say something, just text me privately. And the reason that I think that course preparation is super helpful is it helps you prepare for other courses in Maryland so you can take things that you're interested in and succeed academically, but also just set yourself up for the career that you want. So I made this for a couple different groups. I think it'll help prospective students because it gives them an intuition of how computer science in Maryland plays out. But because computer science kind of programs and majors are similar across the country, I think it'll be helpful to other students, although the course codes, of course, will be different. But also, I think the main group it'll help is current students so they can see what their current classes lead into, which gives you motivation for paying attention and caring about what you're learning about, but also looking ahead. It allows you to see what classes you should take or avoid if you did well or didn't do well in them. And specifically, this is really helpful, I think, in the 400 level courses, because although Maryland gives a brief explanation of what that is, and there's even a live panel every semester about what 400 classes I can take, I don't think those are very helpful. And I think that the people giving those information are obviously associated with the department, and so therefore biased. And because I'm a student that's been through my share of 400s and not affiliated, I can give you, I think, a little bit more honest take. And there's a couple of different ways of how you can use this map. Foremost is, as we talked about, going forward, and you can base what classes you want to take in the future based on the classes that you've already taken. Uh, but also going backward, if you look at like the different careers or different 400 levels you want to take, you can see what classes you need to pay like extra close attention to because they'll be relevant later on. So hopefully this all should be helpful. So jumping right in, this is a quick view of the map. And if you're familiar with the degree requirements for the computer science program, you'll see that there's some math requirements and computer science requirements, but I don't think these are very accurate, and having it just as a binary choice, I don't think really makes sense because a lot of these computer science classes are basically math classes just taught under the computer science department. And if you just judge them by the course code, it's not really going to help you plan out what you want to take. So instead, I made it a kind of spectrum that goes horizontally here. On one side, you have the super heavy programming classes. The other side, you have math. In the middle, you have something that's sort of in between. And then I kind of sectioned them off into layers. So this first layer is normally what you take in the first semester, your first semester of object-oriented programming in Java and Calc 1. Obviously, if you took one of these in high school, it might be a little bit lopsided, but this gives you the general gist of things. And the first kind of relation is pretty easy. It's almost a direct relation from comp sci 131 to 132. It's the same language. It's just everything with data structures and a little bit more complicated. Same thing with Calc 1 and Calc 2, as you guys might imagine. But the next level is where things kind of get interesting. And specifically, with going from 132 to 216, the main concepts you're applying are your programming knowledge that you've acquired of one, learning new programming a language, because this is now in C instead of Java, and also specifically with the binary unit taught in 132. So make sure if you want to do your best in 216 to not completely blow that off because it's even more important. In addition, for on the math side of things, at this point you can kind of choose whether or not you want to take stats or linear algebra or Calc 3. And this kind of depends on what you like. If you like the graphical component, then maybe I mean, we all have to take statistics as comp sci major, but definitely do that. Or in choosing between linear algebra and Calc 3, if you like the different concepts but simpler math, maybe linear algebra. But if you want the same type of thing, just more complicated, go with Calc 3. But the first kind of interesting part is with CMSC 250, which I think is more on the math side of things. It has no programming component. Really, the only relation to this whole other side is with the data structures you talk about. You learn about trees and graphs and such like in 132, and that's, again, talked about in a mathematical concept in 250. But as someone who's took these two classes concurrently, I can tell you that you really don't need any knowledge from any of these classes in 250, which really relies on a strong math background. Uh, And then going forward to this next level, that math background continues into CMSC 351. But I think it's a little bit more program centric because you talking about runtimes, a little bit more in algorithms, which is I think is inherently a little bit more useful for programming, but still heavily on the math side of things, and no real way related to any of the other programming classes that you're going to take. In addition, on the programming side of things, the whole concept of learning a new programming language will be put to the test in CMSC 330, where you learn 3 programming languages back to back to back. And although there's a little bit more to the class, there's a security unit at the end. That's the general gist of it. And then finally, the last kind of 300 level class, it has an asterisk next to it, which means that it is optional. You don't have to take it. But as you can tell from all the arrows going to it, I think it's really a kind of core computer science class. And the reason being is that you take your object-oriented programming skills that you developed in 132, you combine it with some statistics from Staff 400, some math from linear algebra, and also from Calc 3, because you do some multivariable regression. Now, I took the class not remembering very much of this and did fine, but I would have had a lot easier time if I had been stronger in these math concepts and been able to apply it, because it's really kind of the exact middle between the programming and math side of things. And also, you don't necessarily have to take it in that order. For example, feel free to take Stat 400 later on, however it best fits in your schedule, but just know that this relationship does hold, and that many of the concepts that are just briefly talked about in 320 are actually explained a lot more in each of these individual classes. So if you want to do your best in that class, you could potentially take as many of these beforehand as is convenient for you. So at this point, we're done with all the lower level computer science courses. And so we can kind of zoom out to talk about all of the upper level classes. And I color coded them based on the first number that's after the CMSC. You can kind of see that in your general degree requirements here. You can see that there's the area 1 that has the 100s, the area 2 that has the 200 or 20s and 10s and 20s and so forth. And I color coded them so the 30s are blue, the 10s are orange, reds are 50s, and so forth. But I still put them inside the spectrum. So on one side, you have classes like 417, which are severely ComSci. There's a whole lot of programming. 412, again, a high level of low level programming. On the other side, you have classes like your machine learning or artificial intelligence that you definitely do use programming concepts similar to 320, but you're relying on a lot of algorithms from 351 and some math concepts from these earlier classes, as well as really just a lot of 320. But on the other side of the spectrum, you're taking classes that are, for all intents and purposes, math classes just taught under the computer science department. I think recognizing this as such is very helpful, because sure, you can just look at computer science plans and kind of like this, the classic 4-year plan, but I don't think this really tells you how classes are related. And even if you just judge by the area that they're under, as I demonstrate, I think that the area doesn't mean a whole lot a lot of the time. For example, 420 is a super programming heavy class. There's basically no math at all, like other than addition of when you're adding up how long it takes to do skip lists. But on the other hand, for machine learning, there's a whole lot of math theory. And so if you're just kind of viewing those entire 20 section as kind of one unit, I don't think that is very true or very helpful. Same thing with like comparing how things are with math versus CS. If you're good at one of those areas and you want to focus on one, and you know you have to take a couple from one area, a couple from another, you can lean on one side of this map depending on what you're more skilled at. Or alternatively, if you want to get better at something, then maybe take more of those classes that'll force you to get better at them. But it just gives you that option. So all of these labels, I think, show what's taken from one class. For example, as we talked about in that 330 unit, that at the very, very end, it's only talked about for like a week, but really the high level security aspects of 330 is the only thing that's really useful for a lot of these 400 level classes. It comes into play in 414, which is security, and 417, which is networking. But the main next step from, if you really like CMSC 330, is to take 430. It uses OCaml. You do a bunch of Lexer parser stuff that you ended up doing in this class. So if you like that, that's your logical next step if you want more of the same. Same thing for 216 if it's taught in C. So all the classes taught in C, 411, 412, 414, 417, that give yield different things, as well as language like low-level architecture or operating systems, or that low-level security like buffer overflows. All you can see how these things kind of play out. And if you liked one of those units in particular, then maybe aim for one of those classes. Alternatively, if you didn't like C at all, like me, you don't ever have to really take a class in C again. If you have other options, you can take classes like 436, which deal with Java or Kotlin, which is same object-oriented programming concepts you talked about in 132, with perhaps just a little bit of architecture from 216, but you don't need to know C at all. Same thing for 420. You can, if you liked Java, then you can take it in Java with teachers like, I guess Jason's gone, but other teachers teach it in Java versus I think Samet teaches it in C. Same thing with 433, very good continuation from the parallelism concepts taught in 132. But if what you liked from 132 is more the version of control and project organization, well then 435 might be more of your fit. Same thing with 434. And then you can kind of see that 320 really, I think, is a core class to getting into any combination of math and CS. If you basically every single unit you learn in 320 has a 400 level class. There's a couple machine learning ones, natural language processing, one on AI, some combinations of statistics as well. So hopefully using this in addition to just reading the course's descriptions and everything that's currently available should help you make informed decisions. And that way, if you know, like me, that you don't like math, but you like computer science, you can make informed choices about what 400 levels you'll do best at. And zooming out one more level, you can look at what I think the different relations of careers are. And again, this is not necessarily with the programming to math spectrum, but more related to what 400 level classes I think logically go into these different careers or roles that a lot of people I know go to next after having a computer science degree. For example, if you like a lot of object-oriented programming concepts, like 433 or 420, you might find yourself looking more into like full stack software engineering or just normal software engineering, like back end, front end. If you liked coordinating group projects, because 435 is really just a lot of group projects, then maybe the project manager or program manager, depending on which company you're going to, is the right role. If you really like the UX kind of human-centered design from 434, then maybe a UX designer is the same for you. And so you can kind of see that, like, for example, a lot of the 320 and 400 levels based off of 320, you could be in a data science or research associate. If you like the computer graphics, computer vision, then maybe graphics engineer working on something like virtual reality, the hardware behind the Oculus or Rift. And I didn't really know what to put for these pure math classes other than being a mathematician, like a professor, or going into some niche field where you're really just working on math on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully this helps. Obviously, if you look at something like the data science, which is a specialization, it kind of gives you what classes are related to that area. And I think that those largely hold true. It's like the specialization of a lot of these classes, but that is more the university making their own distinctions. And this is my personal one that I've talked about with some of my friends, and they seem to agree with me. So hopefully this can make you, if you were going forward, again, just based off of your previous experiences in your classes, what classes you might like after that and what careers you might like after that. Or if you have a career that you really want to do, like you really want to be a data scientist, then, well, maybe focus on this kind of general area and not worry about the UX design or parallelism and focus on more of those 400 level classes. And this is part of a possibly ongoing series, depending on how you guys feel about it. Feel free to give comments on wherever you saw this, but I'm hoping that in the future, I can use a website where I have this and more information that I get asked constantly, and either write it out on this website or make a video out of it if it's something that needs a little bit more explanation. But Let me know what you think and have a good one, guys.